It's time for Michigan's newest sports talk show, Mitten Madness.
And here he goes. Defense win championship.
Michigan sports talk from here in Battle Creek. The latest stories, the biggest games, all across the Mitten State.
That's not something to play with.
Streaming live and on demand on the 95.3 WBCK app. Here are your hosts, Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes.
Hello there. Good morning. Welcome in to Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK. Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes getting ready to talk all things Michigan sports. Got plenty to get into within the next hour. As always, if you ever miss a show or anything like that, you can always run it back on the WBCK app on demand or WBCKFM.com whenever you feel. We'll obviously always keep things pretty up to date as what we're talking about as the Red Wings are pushing for the playoffs. The UFL is still underway. We're 2 weeks away from the NFL draft here in Michigan over on the west side. We'll talk some draft talk as well. Tigers getting off to a hot start and maybe a hot take surrounding them. All that and more upcoming on the show. First things first. DJ, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Lacrosse is really starting to pick things up. We're getting into the heavy part of our season, like 3-game weeks all the time. And the team's really catching their footing. Tons of sports to watch on the weekend and just vibing through life. Can't be upset.
Yeah, same. I'm really glad things have settled down now that women's college basketball is over, to cover Iowa on the side and all the chaos that ensues with Caitlin Clark. Excited to see her get drafted on Monday. First overall, the Indiana Fever. Did you see, by the way, because we've debated at nauseum almost about the WNBA and how they're going to handle this. 36 nationally televised games for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever announced. Out of 40 games they play in the regular season.
That doesn't mean people are going to watch them.
True. I'll give you that. I mean, 30, because I do like the Las Vegas Aces, who are two-time two-time WNBA champions back-to-back seasons. They only got 35.
I mean, that's one less.
I know, but still, like, come on. They're really trying to cash in on Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I would. I mean, and they've tried this before. Like, they tried to cash in on, what's homegirl, big girl out in Vegas. Asia Wilson. They tried to with her. They tried to with Skylar Diggins. They tried to with Maya Moore. They tried to with Candace Parker. Like, this is nothing new. They always try and put, that big star that's coming out in as many televised games as they can. That doesn't mean people bite for it. I want them to.
Were any of them as big a star as Caitlin Clark, though? Is a defining question.
Man, like
they're probably better players overall.
Okay,
I'll give you
what
that.
I'll say is they're not quote unquote stars, and that's not their fault.
Right,
like,
for sure.
Due to like social media and stuff now, like Caitlin Clark has a bigger name. Like if social media was out when Cheryl Swoops was hooping, we wouldn't even know Caitlin Clark.
Right.
First off.
No,
you know what I'm saying? So like
I understand.
It's like that kind of thing. Like seeing footage of Kim Mulkey. Like Kim Mulkey was better than Caitlin Clark. But like at the time she wasn't going to be able to blow up like that. But like social media has helped them a lot. So like I'm really like excited for that part of the game. Like I do hope it eventually blows, but like I'm not sure what's going to happen with this specific scenario.
I'm kind of with you on that. As long as it explodes eventually, because these women deserve their due. I mean, they're obviously the game has stepped up. Anybody that has paid attention because of Caitlin Clark, they're seeing women can play ball. Maybe there's some changes that should be made. You and I have talked about it, but they can hoop, and it's fun to watch either way. Let's get into Michigan sports though, because she's we don't have a WNBA team in Detroit. That needs to change. Hopefully some attention will be paid to that eventually. Hockey. The world of hockey. I was joking before the show. The Red Wings have scorned me a little bit. They're inconsistencies as of late, kind of making it hard for me to even enjoy the Tigers being successful to start the season. The Detroit Red Wings are currently out of the wild card. One of those is already locked up by the Tampa Bay Lightning. They have locked up a playoff spot. They've locked up the wild card because the Atlantic Division is all settled. The Pittsburgh Penguins are currently in that number 2 slot. The Red Wings are 1 point behind, as are the Washington Capitals. And the Red Wings have lost to both of those teams within the past several days. The Penguins, of course, was on Thursday night, overtime thriller, losing 6-5 as Sidney Crosby goes over 1,000 assists. The Penguins have been on an absolute tear, and I think I've been over this before, but it's probably not hard to guess. I am a Pittsburgh sports guy, and until we started doing this show, any attention I ever paid to hockey was for the Penguins. I am a Sidney Crosby guy. I am a Pittsburgh Penguins fan first. But for the sake of the show, I want to see the Red Wings succeed. Props to them for getting this one into overtime and losing in overtime to a team that is now seated ahead of them. But it's still a dangerous thing to go out, have the opportunity to play a team that is on par with you, really and truly has a flipped script on stories of the season, because Penguins are awful to start the season and they've really been on a tear lately, whereas the Red Wings started very, very strong and they have struggled as of late. This was a crucial game, as was the Washington game not too long ago, and they drop both of them, and now the Red Wings are in trouble, DJ.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a special place at the same time, right? We took a little look at the standings ahead of time. They're literally a single point behind the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they're tied with the Capitals right now in terms of getting into that last wild card spot. With a couple of games left, it's not out of the reach for them to make it, but they're going to need some help. They're going to have to win a game. They're going to need, the Penguins to drop a few, and they're going to have to keep it tight. And that's pretty much the thing, is they're in that position where every game matters. But for them, with the one team, or really the two teams that they're fighting against for this one spot, they have tougher roads than they do headed forward. So if the Wings are able to squeeze out one or two while their opponents are dropping a couple, where they're in a good position to head into the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll pick the Red Wings game tonight against the Maple Leafs. That's a huge one, because if they can manage to win that one, that's really going to put them in the driver's seat, especially when you look at who the Pittsburgh Penguins are playing. And we'll also pick that game. The Penguins play the Bruins, who have retaken the number one overall seeding there, I believe. Nope, I can't look at this thing. The Rangers are at the number one overall seed now. But the Bruins, tops in the Atlantic, that's who the Penguins are going to be playing. And we'll pick that game as well. The Penguins have a much tougher close to the season than the Red Wings do, with the Penguins closing out. If I can find it. There it is. The Penguins have a much tougher road to close the season. They play Boston and Nashville at home, and then they close on the road against the Islanders. Whereas the Red Wings, obviously they play the Maple Leafs tonight, and then they split road and home games with the Canadiens, who are one of the worst teams in the league. So the opportunity is there to stack some Eastern wins while Pittsburgh plays a Western team in one of these final three. Now, don't lose sight of the Capitals. Don't lose sight of the Flyers. They both have the same number of points as the Red Wings. But as of right now, you're just looking up. You're not looking side to side. And the Red Wings, they do have some control over their destiny, but they've got to stack W's in those next three games.
It has to be W's. Any loss at this point pretty much knocks you out of contention. So, you have a tough game against the Maple Leafs, but you got to figure out how to win that one. And you got the Canadiens coming up, which I believe, the Red Wings are better than the Canadiens, so they're going to have to go out and prove it. But first they got to get past the Maple Leafs. I think that's where things start, is taking it one game at a time and winning the ones that are right in front of you.
So as of right now, they're on the outside looking in. But looking at this season as a whole, before we know the outcome of whether or not they're postseason bound, you look at this season for what it is with Coach Lalonde and everything that has kind of progressed. Last season, they hovered around 500, got above 500 for the first time in a while. This year, they're comfortably above 500, but they're still fighting and scratching and clawing to get into the postseason, and they very well could miss it. If they do miss it, is it still considered a positive season, still a successful season, or is it more stagnant, do you think?
I think some people would be upset that they didn't make it back to the playoffs after kind of being so close and kind of wanting that after not having it for the last couple of years. But I think you got to take a step back and really look, for 6-7 years, nowhere close were they to the playoffs. And now you're a few games out. Just take it for what it is, build off of it, and be ready to support them as they head into next year with a chance to actually make the playoffs.
Yeah, and truth be told, and maybe I'm able to look at it from this perspective because I have considerably more sympathies for Pittsburgh, but if you get ousted from the playoffs late in the season because of Sidney Crosby, it's a little bit harder to be upset than it is for most other players, most other teams' situations that the league could throw at you. As he passed 1,000 assists. It's insane. Crosby, one of the GOATs in all of sports, let alone hockey. And there's still a gap between he and Wayne Gretzky. So let's move on over to your Michigan Wolverines on the ice. Making it to the Frozen Four. We mentioned last week they're the only program, the Michigan Wolverines, to make the Frozen Four and the college football playoff in the same season. And they've done it for 3 straight years. However, this time out on the ice, kind of seems like that first year that the Wolverines made the postseason. They got absolutely dragged by Georgia because Boston College put the bang thing on them and won 4-0 to advance to the national championships. This was back on Thursday. The Wolverines have been eliminated from the NCAA tournament in hockey. DJ, your reactions?
It was a great run. Honestly, being able to beat Michigan State after the tough time they had against them this year, and playing in the Frozen Four 3 years in a row, that's next level. They're the only school to have gone to the Final Four and the Frozen Four and the CFP in the same 3 years in a row. Only team in the country to do that, and the only team I believe to have gone to all 3, except I guess Michigan State is in that as well. It's a very select, teams that have been to the CFP, the Final Four, and the Frozen Four, and Michigan is an institution that can say that, so I'm more than happy with it.
All right, that's going to wrap us up for the first segment. We'll come back, continue the conversation. We're going to talk a little oblong ball, the UFL, the NFL draft coming to Detroit. It's time to get excited for football in the Mitten State once again. This is Mitten Madness on 95.3 W. Here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK. Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes. Let's talk a little football, starting with the UFL and the Michigan Panthers. They're 1-1. They beat the Battlehawks in exciting fashion to open the season, and then only lost by a touchdown to one of the best teams in the entire league, the Birmingham Stallions, playing that one at home. They have another home game this week against arguably the worst team in the entire league, the Houston Roughnecks. That's at noon in Detroit. Go get those $20 tickets or watch it on ABC. And hopefully the Michigan Panthers will come away with a win. But you and I were looking through the stats earlier, learning a little bit more about the team. They've got a quarterback issue.
Yes.
Is what I'm seeing. Like,
bad.
It's a little surprising to me that they played 2 teams that have very good quarterbacks, and with A.J. McCarron being obviously by far the oldest quarterback in this league, but tons of experience with the Battlehawks. And then with the Stallions, they've got Matt Corral, they've got Adrian Martinez. I think Corral is significantly better than Martinez, but those guys are splitting, and they're still good quarterbacks for this league. E.J. Perry is struggling, to say the least, with the Panthers. 56% completion percentage, 1 touchdown in 2 games to 3 picks. He's been sacked 8 times. He's only thrown for 379 yards 2 games. Danny Etling is behind him. You said that Brian Lewerke is on this team. He hasn't gotten an opportunity. We've seen over the years, whether it was the AAF, the XFL, the USFL, and now the UFL, we've seen teams, even good teams, look somewhere else at quarterback when it ain't getting done, because it's hard enough to have quality players anywhere in this league. Everybody's bad at offensive line in these leagues, but if you've got a quarterback, you got a chance, because look at the Battlehawks, look at the Brahmas, look at the Renegades. That's why these teams are good, because they've got proven quarterbacks from these leagues. Do the Panthers need to make a change? They need to ride things out with Perry and see if he can be one of those guys.
Either Perry or figure out what's going on with Brian Lewerke. Like, I don't know why he isn't even getting reps. But then again, we don't know what's happening in practice or like what went down in training camp. Like, we don't really know anything from this point because the coverage isn't as good as what we see in the NFL. So there could be a number of reasons why Lewerke isn't playing or why they're deciding to roll with EJ Perry over Etling. Like we're literally just outside looking in, kind of crystal balling it. But in reality, if you got a guy that's only, averaging 190 yards basically off of 56% with one touchdown in 2 games, you got to do something. He's got to have more than one touchdown in 2 games. And technically he's got 3 because he's got their only 2 rushing touchdowns as well.
Yeah, no Little League team has much of a running game at all.
You still need more than 3 touchdowns out of a guy if he's going to be, your dual threat guy. It's going to help you be successful in this league because we see other teams are going to be able to put up points. Sure, they're not putting up, 30, 40 points a game, but they're putting up 24, 27, and the Panthers have yet to crack 20.
And, looking at the Panthers rushing attack, I think that's even more alarming because it's hard to get good quarterback play when you can't run the ball. Wes Hillis has 18 attempts for 95 yards. It's 5.3 average, which isn't bad, but as a team, they've only got less than 175 rushing yards as a team through 2 games. Obviously they're trailing in both of these games, so they had to throw a little bit more, and the job just isn't getting done there. But when I look at the receiving core and I see names like Marcus Sims and I see names like Trey Quinn and John Hightower, I see names of guys who can play and who can play in this league and be very successful. So something's got to give for the Panthers, and I think it's got to give tomorrow as you're listening in this game against the Houston Roughnecks, who are one of the worst teams in the UFL, and I believe the Panthers are a 2.5 point favorite. The Roughnecks are not good. So you got to come away with a win in this game and show some offensive prowess, because on the back end of this, listen to this, this schedule. You're on the road for the Brahmas. You're on the road for the Showboats. Come back home for the Renegades. You're on the road for the Defenders. That's a 4-game stretch that is going to determine your season for the Panthers. And if you aren't able to perform in those 4 games and pull off wins, if you lose this game to the Roughnecks, you just kind of kiss the whole thing goodbye. But if you're not able to pull wins out in that 4-game stretch, it's going to be hard to be able to do anything when it comes to that race for the postseason. And you got to be able to put up points, especially against the Brahmas, especially against the Renegades.
Yeah, and I think you have to go out and win this game against the Roughnecks first. They're struggling. They're 0-2, so they're going to come out with fire. They're looking to get their first win. And you got a tough schedule coming up, having to play some of the better teams in the league twice. You got to make sure you're ready, and you got to go. And I think it starts with a game like the Roughnecks, kind of giving them an opportunity to put up points. So far, the Roughnecks have given up over 20 points in both their games that they've played this year. 18 in game 1, but they gave up another 23 in week 2. So they're going to give up points, it looks like, and it's going to be a close game. Use this as energy to kind of bound forward and put together some things over the next couple weeks.
All right, let's look at the NFL draft. Detroit's getting ready for the 2024 NFL draft. The Detroit Lions pick at number 29, which is incredibly late for the Lions. I bet when they decided to bring the draft to Detroit that they fully expected Detroit to be one of the first, 5 to 10 teams picking, but that won't be the case. So the city is going to welcome in the rest of the NFL and all their fans to enjoy the annual selection extravaganza. DJ, they in coming up with that welcoming committee, they put up that Detroit Hollywood sign. I just want to get your reactions to it. My biggest gripe, I've heard good things if you're like driving into Detroit and you see the sign from the road as you're supposed to. It doesn't look that bad. Plus, there's a lot of landscaping that'll go around it that'll help its appearance. Won't just look like it's propped up on cinder blocks like some cars on the side of the road in Detroit. My biggest question is, why is it green? Why are the letters green? There's nothing green about Detroit.
It's like a teal color, not green.
It's green.
It's teal.
Okay, but the Pistons don't wear green. Don't wear teal.
Wear teal.
A handful of times a year. I'm not feeling the color of it. That's my biggest problem.
I didn't say I like the color either. I just want you to know it's not green. It's teal.
It looks green. But is teal a shade of green or a shade of blue?
Blue.
Okay, we do not agree on that, but I'll Google it while you talk.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I can't wait for you to pop back on here and tell me that it's blue. But in all seriousness, I heard it does look good from the road, but like up close views and stuff are not that great. We've seen some videos. There's been some music videos and stuff put out already about it. Like people have already been touching on it and laying on it, and like they're just making a mockery of the sign. So I think that's kind of funny about it, but it's kind of just one of those small piece things that they did to kind of brighten the area as the draft comes to town.
Teal is a deep blue-green color is exactly what Google gave me. So
I guess we're both right.
I guess so.
But blue is in front of green, so...
Okay, so we're doing the positioning on the show. Okay, so let's look at the Lions in the draft first. If we have time, we'll get into some other draft storylines. Looking at Mel Kiper Jr.'s most recent mock draft, it's a 2-round mock-up on ESPN. If you've got ESPN Plus to check it out, he has the Detroit Lions going with Adonai Mitchell, the wide receiver out of Texas, who received, if I'm not wrong, 2 out of the final 3 shots from Texas in their efforts to win the playoff game against Washington. That's who he's got them choosing in the first round, the 29th overall pick. And in the second round, Adisa Isaac, a edge rusher from Penn State. If you were to ask me what I would expect the Detroit Lions to do, it's to go the exact opposite route of that. If I'm of the opinion, now I know that they're picking very late in the first round, so your choice pass rushers are all gone. There's not a very strong pass rushing draft class to begin with. If I'm the Detroit Lions, I'm not leaving the first round without a pass rusher. DJ, what do you make of Mel Kiper's decisions here, and what would you do differently?
I mean, I like his decisions actually a lot. I think they address kind of what the Lions need to go after. Like, their offense is in a really good shape, in my opinion. Like, can you always use another skill player? Sure. Can you always go with another lineman? Absolutely. But I think more of their problems are on the defensive side of the ball. I think they could use another corner, and I think the edge rushing has to get better. Like, it literally has to get better. Aiden Hutchinson cannot do it all on his own. And if you add another edge rusher, you already have some pretty decent inside guys. So the amount of double teams that Aiden Hutchinson will face will be significantly lower, allowing him to actually impact the game. So I'm solid with his decisions. I probably wouldn't have gone exactly with those guys. I am a little biased to a few guys and how I think they would fit into the Lions style of play. More specifically, I think Michael Barrett and Mike Saberstead would be absolutely fantastic in this. I don't know what line would want to see Aiden Hutchinson and Michael Barrett on opposite sides of each other. And I think Saberstead might be the best nickelback in the draft.
They don't need a nickelback.
I'm not saying they need.
They've got the dude from Alabama.
I'm not saying they need a nickelback, but he can play really any position in the secondary.
Yeah.
So
Branch can too. So you'd have a lot of versatility.
You would have versatility there, and a lot of the guys you have there already have some versatility as far as secondary. So it allows you to kind of throw them out there and put them in the best position at the time to be advantageous for you.
Well, speaking of secondaries, the pick immediately after the Detroit Lions is the Baltimore Ravens. And first of all, this is just like the Ravens. So Mel Kiper has probably nailed this one. But Kool-Aid McKinstry is the pick there, the cornerback from Alabama. If you're the Lions and you take a first round wide receiver, something you really do not need. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. J-Mo is coming along. You've made a lot do with middling receivers as far as league perspective. Plus, you got Sam Laporta, who is just a monster. Best tight end rookie season of all time. If you take a wide receiver in the first round with Kool-Aid McKinstry still on the board, I'm going to list off some of these other names. Xavier Leggett is a better wide receiver, by the way. TJ Tampa is still on the board. If you wanted to go, Max Melton is still on the board. If you wanted to get better at linebacker, Edgerrin Cooper is still on the board. Kamari Lassiter. There's way better options than taking a wide receiver in the first round. So I heavily disagree with that. Actually, looking at Mel Kiper's mock draft, the pass rusher that he had them take out of Penn State was the first pass rusher taken since the first round. So again, not a big pass rushing draft class, but maybe the Lions will trade up. You know, they've moved around a lot over the past couple of years. They moved around for Brian Mitchell, who's that? For Brian Branch, and they also moved around for Jamison Williams. So maybe they move around for another Alabama guy. I'd like that. Roll Tide. So we'll take a break. When we come back, Pistons, Tigers. We'll cram those into our short segment before we get to our picks and the final here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 W.
Detroit sports fans, Wolverines and Spartans alike. This is your sports show, Mitten Madness, with Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes on 95.3 WBCK.
Back here on Mitten Madness, 95.3 WBCK, Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes. Let's continue the debate about teal another time and just talk about a team that used to wear it, the Detroit Pistons. They've got 2 games remaining. They're 13-67 with a chance to clinch the worst record in the NBA for the second straight season. They play the Mavericks last night. You already know what happened in that. We don't. We're recording on Friday as usual. So for you, they only have 1 game left. That's the Spurs Sunday, tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. And then this grueling, unforgiving season will be over for the Pistons. The Washington Wizards will play Boston. I'm not sure who their other game is against to close out the season, but that's the only other team that can have a worse record or tie. Actually, that can only tie. The Detroit Pistons will have the worst record. It's whether or not the Washington Wizards share that distinction with them, I believe. Yeah, that's how math works. Don't do math in public, folks. DJ, thoughts on the Detroit Pistons' final run here of a absolutely horrid season?
If you ask me, I think they've already locked up the worst record in the NBA. I think just one more loss kind of puts them out of it. Yeah. I don't think they're going to beat the Mavericks as we talk on Friday and they're listening Saturday morning. I don't think that happened. So I think they're already out of contention, which hopefully they actually get the number 1 overall pick this time and they make a smart decision with it. They made some pretty good decisions over the last couple of years in terms of drafting, free agency, and putting together a team that can compete. Now it's up to coach to bring in the right guys put the right guys on the floor together now that they are here. You have a very solid team that has, big guys down low that can bang with the best and can grab rebounds and, have solid post game. You have your guards in Ivy and Sasser and Cunningham who can handle the ball and shoot. You have your forwards in Bagley and Oscar Thompson who can stretch the floor a little bit, but also grab rebounds and such. I don't know how he's not able to put the 5 together, but that is where things have to happen. Is Coach Monty Williams has really got to sit down and look at how guys are playing, watch some film, and put together the 5 that are going to work together to bring out the best results.
The Pistons are down to their 67th loss with the loss of the Bulls, regardless of what happened last night, against the Mavericks. That's a franchise record. So even though they're back-to-back seasons of mediocrity, and really it's been mediocre for a long time, but of being the worst team in the NBA, setting the record for the longest losing streak within a season, and now this. We've talked a lot. You haven't given very much love to Monty Williams, but based off of the offseason last year, based off of how they managed the draft despite it not going their way at all, felt like Oscar Thompson was a solid pickup. You got Cade Cunningham back healthy, and you compare him with Jaden Ivey, and it also seemed like you were going to have a resurgence there with Jalen Duren. It seemed as though there was reason to believe that this team could be a below average to average team, and that wasn't even remotely the case. So, obviously it's disappointing, but just how disappointing is it for the Pistons to be back in this situation at the end of the season as the worst team in basketball?
I don't think it's as disappointing as some people want to make it out to be. I just think what sucks is how bad the record really was. I think that had they won a few more games and they were still the worst, it wouldn't be that bad, but to only win 13, maybe 14 games, it's just not as good as this roster truly is. Yeah. And I think it's starting to get at the fans more than anyone. It's they know how good the roster is. They know what guys should be on the floor together, and they just feel like things aren't being done to make the Pistons again. The 90s and early 2000s Pistons were some of the most exciting basketball to watch, and it's just not happening for Detroit fans anymore who absolutely love basketball.
Yeah, and especially with all the resurgence of sports going on around the Pistons are the only team that sucks. The Lions are good. The Red Wings are just, they're hanging on there, trying to get back into the postseason. Things are at least going in the right direction there. The Tigers, expected to be a relatively average team. They've started the season so hot that we're going to get into a hot take here in just a bit. But even still, look at the Michigan Wolverines, all the success that program has had. Look at the Michigan State Spartans. The football team is bad. The basketball team is still kind of holding serve a little bit, though it was a little bit more of a disappointing season. There's so much going on in Michigan sports, and the Pistons are the laughing stock of it all. And it doesn't have to be that way, because this is a team with a rich history and a lot of reasons to be confident in what it has on the floor. And honestly, I'm with you. Monty Williams is a big reason that this team isn't where it needs to be, because there's certainly more talent than 13 wins for the Detroit Pistons. Let's talk about those Tigers, though. They, as we're recording here on Friday, they're 7-4. The Minnesota Twins series got underway last night, so it we don't know the outcome of that. Obviously, it's a series, so we'll see what's going to happen with them. But 7-4 is good for third in the AL Central. However, Bradford Doolittle, who you may recognize as a name from ESPN, has a pretty hot take that the Detroit Tigers will win the AL Central. The same AL Central that is inhabited, by the way, by the Cleveland Guardians and the Kansas City Royals, two pretty good franchises overall. Now they'll say that, you could pick any team to win the AL Central outside of the White Sox. The White Sox are terrible. And the Tigers did lose a game to the White Sox, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No,
they didn't.
not.
No, they didn't. Okay, I was mistaken. That was the Mets. That was the other bad team that they lost to, and the A's. So here we are. It could be a mild take. I think it's a rather hot take. It's not quite as hot as the other guy that said Aiden Gonzalez said the Pirates would win the NL Central, and that guy is on. Ooh, let me buy some of that ahead of 420, my friend. But the Detroit Tigers winning the AL Central. I know you've got a little bit more confidence in the Tigers than I do at this point, but confidence level on that take.
I think it's moderate. I don't think it's like super hot, but I think it's kind of like on the cusp of just being like a solid take versus a hot take. Like depending on how like the next couple weeks go, that could be a solid take that like some people didn't see coming versus if it doesn't go so well over the next couple weeks, that is an extremely hot take that you just threw out there. The Tigers have played well to start the season. Sure, they have a couple bad losses. They have one loss to the Nets, and then they lost a series sweep to the A's. Those are both very bad, but it is still the beginning of the year, and I'll take that. Sometimes you got some growing pains at the beginning of the year, and if this is what it's going to be for the Tigers, in order for them to be good, I'm here for it. Sometimes you got to shake off the dust early, and 7-4, third in the AL Central. If we can keep this pace, I'll take it, and maybe we steal a few from the Guardians and some of the Twins and a couple of these teams that are ahead of us around the league that put us on notice.
The Detroit Tigers have fallen to 17th in the ESPN Power Rankings after those losses that you brought up. Gonzalez wrote the little blurb there for the Tigers and brought up the fact that Javier Baez, who is by all accounts the best player on the team, right? The hope of everyone that is as optimistic as DJ or more optimistic that he could be an offensive juggernaut for this franchise should they find the defense to be able to keep the scores low, get some hot bats, and be led by Baez. That obviously has not been the case. Through his first 9 games, Baez has mustered only 5 hits and 33 at bats, striking out 11 times without drawing any walks or producing any extra base hits. If your best player is not your best player, you've got some problems. Now, obviously, very long season. The rest of the Tigers obviously have started off very hot, even if Baez hasn't, but you want your best player to be your best player, and the Tigers need that, especially if they are to be this grand disruptor and potentially win the AL Central. I think that take is that. It's a hot take. The Tigers are not winning the AL Central. Can they surprise and push for a wild card spot? Sure, fine. Yeah, cool. I've got no issues with that. They were a hovering 500 team last year. I expect them to be much of the same this year, and unless they're stronger heading into the All-Star break, or not the All-Star break, the trade deadline, if they're stronger heading into the trade deadline that they feel like they can make a move that will completely alter the fortunes of the franchise, then I have a great deal of confidence that they'll make the postseason and make some noise and return to the Tigers that we know and love. But if that's not the case, if they're still just hovering around 500 around the trade deadline, they're still just hovering around 500 towards the end of the regular season, then that's a completely different story. And that's the situation where they need to start analyzing what assets are worth giving up to get better and what assets need to be utilized to a greater degree in order to make the team better, because stagnation is not a place you want to be. You do not want to be stuck in the middle for a decade. It's hard to come out of that. So yeah, Baez has got to play better. Tigers have to show the consistency throughout the season and not lose series to the A's, who don't have a home.
You're overreacting.
I'm not.
You're overreacting. You are, and it's okay.
I'm tempering expectations because the Red Wings scorned me a little bit.
Welcome to being a fan in Michigan.
But see, all my optimism paid off for the Lions. Lions did more than you ever thought they could. And you were very negative about the Lions throughout the regular season. And then once the postseason came, you're like, hey, maybe they can do it. Maybe they can do it. And then they did it. And the whole time I was like, I think they can really do this. I got on that bandwagon with the Red Wings and said, hey, it's a renaissance. We're going to be all right. And here we are. They lose that killer game to the Penguins. And now we're trying to talk up the Tigers to be AL Central favorites. So they just lost a series to the A's. I have a hard time buying that.
That's fine. And I have a hard time buying that you're going to beat me in picks anyway.
That is probably true. We'll take our picks next here on Mitten Madness. 95.3 WBCK.
95.3 WBCK.
Back here on Mitten Madness 95.3 WBCK. Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes closing it down with our picks. And DJ, it was a pretty good week for both of us last week, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I went 5-1, you went 6-0, so that currently has you with a 3-game lead on me. You're 28-20 on the year. I am 25-23 on this new season.
Boy, we needed that because it was not a good start to this effort. But let's see if we can keep it going. I'll get us started with the Red Wings game later tonight. They'll travel out to Toronto to take on the Maple Leafs. The Leafs have already secured their position in the postseason, but something tells me they're not just going to let the Red Wings come on in and win the season series and potentially make the postseason themselves. I'm always of the opinion, if you can keep a rival out, keep them out. Don't let them play games. Don't let them into the postseason. The Red Wings, they're 16-19-4 on the road. The Leafs are 22-15-3 at home. DJ, who wins it?
This one's hard for me, but I'm going to try and will some power into the Red Wings, and I'm going to take a shot here and say that they win this game, even though it's been rough for them the past few weeks.
So I'm going to do something very surprising here. I'm going to take the Leafs. There's just not a lot of confidence steaming off of the Red Wings, and I'm not saying that their season is shot. There's very well a possibility for them to lose this game to the Leafs and still make the postseason. I wouldn't be shocked if they lost in overtime like they did to the Penguins, but I'm going to stick with the Leafs.
Moving on, we'll stay on the ice for this next one. The Bruins will be taking on the Penguins, which is once again a huge implication game for the playoffs for all teams involved. All teams are working to, get better seeding or get into the playoffs. Penguins win, it's going to be tougher for the Red Wings. Bruins winning just means that they're closer to that 1 seed that they've been trying to get at all season. Who comes out on top of this one?
See, I know you took this game, so you want to test my allegiance to the Penguins. I'm going to go against this team too. I'm not picking the Red Wings or the Penguins this go around. I'm going to stick with the Bruins, stick with the better team, because again, if you've got a chance to knock a rival out, and the Bruins and the Penguins don't like each other, then knock them out. If the Penguins have been surging like this and you know that they've got a tough close to the end of the season and you can shut it down, then shut it down. And the Bruins have that opportunity. The series is split. Bruins won the most recent game back in March, 5-1. I'm not saying it'll be a similar outcome to that, but I do think Boston will win this one on the road.
I think Boston's going to be able to come out on top of this one as well. They are on the road, which will make it tougher. It's hard to win games like this where the fans are going to be out. I expect Pittsburgh to have tons of fans in the seats. It's going to be loud in there, but the Bruins are simply just a better team. They're all around doing things at a much better rate than the Penguins have all season. From goaltending to forwards to D, it's all getting done at a high rate level, and they've been one of the best teams in the NHL all year. I don't expect them to slow down anytime soon, and I think they take care of the Penguins easy peasy.
Let's move over to the gridiron and pick some UFL games. The first one up, the one I got, is the DC Defenders as a 2-point favorite over the Arlington Renegades. The Defenders starting Jordan Teamu at quarterback. They've got a host of recognizable names on this team, by the way. Puka Williams, Kiki Kuti, DJ Swearinger. But the Renegades, they won the XFL League Championship last year. I think they're 1-1 on the season. Luis Perez of Birmingham Iron fame back with the AAF. Vic Beasley on the defensive side of the ball. He once led the NFL in sacks. And Marquette King at punter. Punters are people too, DJ, and King should be in the NFL.
I love punters, and I think Marquette King absolutely should be in the NFL. He's shown us a lot over the last couple of years and how good he truly is. But I think he's going to do a lot, for this team that he's playing for here in the UFL. This is a big game in terms of the fact that this is two teams who are looking to catch their footing, right? The Renegades, who have yet to win a game, even though they were spectacular
I was wrong.
last year, they're struggling. And it's not that they're struggling to a huge margin. They're just a couple of plays away from being 2-0. But nonetheless, seeing 0 in the win column is hard to get over. That's a hard hump to beat. The Defenders 1-1 in tight games, and they're just trying to figure out their formula. So it's two teams just trying to continue to be on the right steps, and it's going to be a hard-fought battle. And I think I'm going to go with the Defenders. I think they've shown that they're just a little more consistent right now than the Renegades have been to start the season.
The Renegades will be at home for this one, and although I see some NFL talent on that Defenders squad, and I really like Jordan Te'amu as a quarterback. He's once the quarterback for the Battlehawks. I also really like Luis Perez. The Renegades aren't going to go 0-3. You know, they're one of those teams. They're not going to go 0-3. So give me Arlington at home.
All right, well, we'll stay on the gridiron and swap things over to San Antonio. The Brahmas will be taking on your Battlehawks since you're such a fan of those guys down in St. Louis. Do you think A.J. McCarron and the Battlehawks have enough to get out of San Antonio with a win, or will the Brahmas remain undefeated?
I don't mean to make a joke at the expense of the injured, but if this comes down to a kick, the Brahmas ain't got what Michigan's got, because Destroying is out for the year with an unfortunate neck injury. Yeah, of course, I'm going to pick the Battlehawks. That first game of the year against Michigan was I'm going to say what it was. It was a fluke. Battlehawks are one of the best teams in the UFL. Brahmas are too, but I really think the Battlehawks will be here to play. Lean on A.J. McCarron in that passing game with Hakeem Butler and Wayne Gallman out of the backfield. They got this one in the bag.
I am going to say the complete opposite. Surprise, surprise. I'm going with the Brahmas, so this week is going to be a crazy week. But I'm just going with trends. The Brahmas have been able to play impressively over the last 2 weeks. Week 1, they had everything in the bag. They looked strong and comfortable leading that game. Week 2, things were a little bit tougher as they had to come from behind to make things happen, but they were able to squeeze out with a win. Until they lose, I'm not picking against them. So I got the Brahmas over your Battlehawks.
It's a quick season, and there's only a handful of teams that can really stretch and go on those 8-2 records or those types of things. I think it's a very balanced league overall. So it'll be a fun one for sure. I'm going to have my last one's on the hardwood. I've got the Lakers and the Pelicans. NBA season is coming to a close. Both of these teams are in the play-in tournament, if I'm not incorrect on that. Obviously, I think both teams are better than their record. They're both incredibly talented. They just had some cold streaks. The Lakers lead the season series 2-1. Their most recent meeting was back in February, so plenty of time. Lakers coming off of a 2-game losing streak to Golden State and Minnesota, whereas the Pels have enjoyed a 3-game winning streak that includes wins over Phoenix, Portland, and a huge win over Sacramento, 135-123 on Thursday. DJ, who wins? Lakers, Pelicans?
I think the Lakers will win this game, and I think it's all of a psychological thing with them. They're trying to win as many games as they can down this stretch to have good momentum heading into the play-in, because they have to win 2 of those games to get into the actual playoffs to possibly take on the Denver Nuggets. So the better mindset and positive energy they have rolling into the game, the better. And I just overall think the Lakers are better. But Christian Wood is out. Anthony Davis is a game-time decision. Jared Vanderbilt is out. Brandon Ingram's a game-time decision as well, as long as Larry Nance Jr. So it's going to be an interesting one, but I'll stay with my Lakers pick.
So I don't know if I've ever discussed this with you. The Pelicans are my NBA team. And they've had a few Alabama guys over the years, and here's the thing. At this point in the season, the Pelicans are actually playing their best ball, not on Herb. That's how it goes. So I'm going to stick with the Pelicans. I think the Lakers will pick up once they're in the play-in tournament. I agree with everything that you said, but I don't think it applies until they're actually in the play-in tournament. I think leading up to that, they're still going to struggle.
And last pick of the week, we're headed over to the Octagon, getting back on the mat, as we have a star-studded ESPN or UFC 300 coming to you over the weekend. I mean, before we even get to it, Davison Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt, Jessica Andrade, Marina Rodriguez, Jalen Turner, Renato Moicano, Holly Holm, Calvin Kattar, Porjaka, Aljamain Sterling, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, Zhang Wei Li. Just a few names on this card, so it's going to be absolutely insane. But Alex Pereira in the main event is taking on Jamal Hill. They're both standing 6'4", both at about 205 pounds. Alex Pereira is a little bit older. Their reach is both at 79. Alex Pereira's unorthodox, while Hill fights in southpaw. Who do you think comes out with the belt?
There's a big part of me that wants to pick Jamal Hill. Just because it's UFC 300, right? Like, something special's got to happen. There's the other side of me that says minus 130 is a heavy favorite in the UFC. You mentioned earlier, minus 550 is absolutely insane down there for Zhang Wei Li. I'm torn. Man, I am torn, because you and I have gone opposite on almost everything. You know what? Give me the American. USA, give me Jamal Hill.
Well, I know that I got one win in the bag. I don't think Alex Pereira's dropping this one. I think he retains his title. Absolutely no question about it. He's been phenomenal. He's 9-2. Jamal Hill is 12-1 though. So I think this fight will be an absolute blockbuster and a way to end what will be one of the best cards we have ever seen. But Pereira keeps his title and remains on top, which has us only one game. One pick the same.
I think that's the first time we've ever done that.
We're both taking the Bruins. I've got the Red Wings. You've got the Leafs. I've got the Lakers. You've got the Pelicans. I've got the Brahmas. You've got the Battlehawks. I've got Defenders. You've got Renegades. I've got Alex Pereira. You've got Jamal Hill. Send us out of here for the weekend.
What was the one that we got the same?
The Bruins.
The Bruins. You read all those off, and now I'm a little worried.
Hey,
those standings going to look a little different next week.
Shoot, man.
Yeah, you're right about that. Shoot. All right, that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week at 10 a.m. here on WBCK. Again, if you missed the show, want to play it back, miss anything that we talked about, you can go listen on the WBCK app or WBCKFM.com. On demand, Mitten Madness, anytime you like. We'll see you next week. For Da'Jzon Hughes, I'm Jacob Harrison. This is Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK.
Join Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. for Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. Miss the show or want to play it back? Stream Mitten Madness live or on demand on the 95.3 WBCK app.